Joining me now to unpack the future of artificial intelligence in Africa are from Accra, Darlington Akogo, founder and chief executive officer of several AI-powered companies, including Amino Health, AI Labs, and from Cairo, Professor Rim Bagat, president of Egypt's University of Informatics, and with me here in studio, Rispa Onyango, digital policy lead under the Digital Economy Department at the Lawyers Hub. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on the program. Professor Bagat, let me start with you on this. Analysts see artificial intelligence as a powerful tool that has the potential to transform many industries and create new opportunities. What is the current state of adoption of AI technology in Africa?
Okay, I guess I can speak from Egypt point of view. AI has been known for a long period for scientists and for researchers and academics. From the government point of view, they started having the strategy for AI on the government level. This was 3 years ago, and now they are doing the second round for the coming 3 years. The strategy is covering everything, basically. It's covering the laws that will govern the AI. It covers where it can be applied in the country in different fields and so on. It covers also the data, availability of data and how we can avail the data. It covers also preparing the human resources for having it applied in everywhere. So really, and also it is preparing the physical resources even on the governmental level that would allow this to happen on a big scale.
Darlington, let me get your view on the current state of adoption of AI technology in Africa. You have several companies. What are you seeing across the continent?
AI is actually doing quite well in Africa. So if you take, for example, we've built our AI solutions in healthcare and agriculture. In healthcare, we built a medical image interpretation AI system. So this is under Amino Health AI Labs. We built this system, rolled it out, and we got users in over 50 countries around the world. And about 15 or 20 different African countries, we had people signing up to our platform and using the AI system. And now if you go outside of that example, if you take something like ChatGPT, everyone is using ChatGPT, from students to professionals, CEOs, everyone is using it across the continent. So definitely the adoption of AI is doing quite well, but then there are still some hurdles. I would say the different stakeholders need to be more deliberate in adopting certain key AI solutions. So if you're looking at, let's say, public institutions across, it could be healthcare, agriculture, education, we need to be much more deliberate in adopting AI solution. Like you mentioned, we do have the AI continental strategy, which is great. And then the various African countries also have their national AI strategy. But the key thing that is left is implementing the ideas we have in the strategy, putting some resources behind it. So that is where I would say we currently are.
Right. So, Rispa, I want to get your view on which countries in Africa you think are leading in AI innovation.
Okay, thank you so much, Beatrice. In terms of just leading, we have what we call the big five. We tend to look at Kenya, look at Egypt, look at Nigeria. We have Morocco also coming in terms of just dealing on the policy side. So, and South Africa. So if you look at how it is they're handling their local innovations, how they are handling conversations around either policies or having laws and regulations, you'll find that many a times they are leading. And that's because artificial intelligence, I tend to look at it as building blocks. So you look at conversations around data protection, you look at conversations around the infrastructure, whether it is connectivity, whether it is accessing devices. Many a times when you look at what's happening within these particular countries, there's a lot of headway in that sense. So I would connote leadership to them, but then if you now go and look at the global or contextualize what it is we are calling leadership in our spaces, then you see that we are still lagging behind.
What is it we are calling leadership in Africa's spaces, though?
Leadership is just who is trying to have, say, data protection or data governance initiatives, laws or regulations in place, and that is primarily because AI is heavily about data. when you're talking about AI, you're talking about data. So who's trying to secure or safeguard or ensure this governance around how we are using this data? You're talking about connectivity. Who is actually allowing more and more of their people to be able to be connected to these devices, to be connected to the internet and not be left behind. And I think Prof has alluded to this, talking about the divide, the digital divide. So the more you're able to have your citizens participating in the digital ecosystem, the more you're leading, you know. A good example currently, I think, even with ITU reports, when you're talking about mobile penetration, South Africa, Kenya, Egypt, they're really leading the pack in terms of just how many people are able to access the internet, how many people have access to mobile devices, how many people have access to the delivery of services online, you know. So in that sense, then you can connote leadership.
So let me get to you, Professor Bagat, and find out exactly if Egypt is among the leading 5 with Kenya, Morocco, and South Africa. Let me find out from you, Egypt's perspective, what it is exactly that Egypt has put in place in order to be to have AI as a key driver of the economy.
In fact, a lot. If I can build on my colleagues' words, connectivity is a key word. Reducing the digital divide is another key word. Connectivity now in Egypt, I mean, for the last few years, there was very good concentration on making the speed is very high, but also making it available, internet connections, even in all the villages of Egypt. So this is going very fast and moving forward. And we're reaching a very, very good stage, actually, in terms of the countries in Africa. So I think we should be happy with this achievement. But the point that my colleague or the other guest mentioned is about the data availability. And she's very right. Data availability is very important for the AI applications. And again, the country has taken very good steps in the last few years, but still more steps are needed in order to make the data available. So the data that's coming from the government and the ministries and connecting them and protecting them and yet making things, some of it available. Also encouraging the different organizations to make their data more and more available, but putting also the law for the data privacy and putting its execution. I mean, the law for the data privacy has been already issued some years ago, but its execution level is still needs to be very clear. So I think, yes, we are moving forward in this direction. What is also important that the government has taken care of is preparing the human resources. As you know, Africa, and of course including Egypt, has the biggest percentage of youth across the different continents. So making these youth moving in this direction and really making them prepared to be the professionals in AI at different levels and different applications is very important.
Right. So Darlington, you know, artificial intelligence is definitely presenting massive developmental opportunities for Africa. From where you're sitting, what are the most promising AI trends or technologies that could have a significant impact on Africa's development?
So actually, one of the things we are working on now is what we call AGI for health. So AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence. What this looks like today is maybe you hear the term generative AI. So generative AI essentially is where all of AI is moving towards, and all of technology actually. And so it allows you to build solutions for different sectors. So you can see things like ChatGPT. This could be leveraged in different sectors. But at Mino Health AI Lab, we are building a generative AI solution for healthcare. Essentially, this is an AI system that has expertise across different medical specialization. Currently, the version we have, you can ask it medical question. You can give it an X-ray. You can give it microscopy images. You can ask it to detect cancer in mammograms, in other forms of imaging, or just ask its medical question to still do all of them. The benefit here is that in a complex field like healthcare, if you have some generalist AI solution like this, you can take it to places that they don't have doctors, they don't have specialists, and it's still going to provide care and assist people. And this can be replicated in different sectors. So generative AI is definitely where the world is headed, and Africa should not be left out of the conversation.
So Rispa, one of the issues, one of the questions that many people want to know when we talk about AI across the world, though, is how much it's going to affect things like job opportunities, how much it's going to interfere, how much it's going to impact human activity. So what are the major concerns around AI and the potential risks associated with AI, particularly in Africa's content?
Okay. Let me stagger them and just segue from the conversations that you're already having. We have talked about already there are challenges or inequalities, issues around the divide. And so AI is potentially going to accentuate those inequalities. If there are people who are currently not able to participate online, that means if we are going to be having solutions that require this digital participation, then they're already missing out. But in the same vein, if we look at it from a global perspective, then we are talking about, we already have historical injustices connoted to Africa in comparison to, say, the EU or the US. They're already miles ahead in terms of technological innovations, in terms of how they're handling their policy issues. And so if we are continually having conversations with them from that power imbalance, it means that we'll constantly be a recipient, we'll constantly be a consumer. And so there's been more and more championing for Africa to actually have a seat at the table and actually have its voice heard. So that is the conversation around inequalities. Then we also have a lot of concern around the large handling of data, which directly goes to issues around disinformation, misinformation, fake news, And so the more this is handled, the more this is the case, then such issues are going to be cropping up. We'll have issues around cyber attacks or cyber incidents. And so if we do not have frameworks that actually allow us to safeguard, then, that is another concern. I can go on and also talk around concerns on the regulation, conversations around the policies. We are still trying to figure out what is the contextual conversation for Africa. Many times we are importing technologies, we are consumers. Our local innovation or the startup ecosystem in Africa is still not as enabled as what you'd get in the other jurisdictions.
Right, so we're going to look at regulation in just a minute. But before we get there, Darlington, I want to point out one of the issues that RISPA has brought about, and that is how much ahead other parts of the world are when it comes to technological innovations as compared to Africa. How big a concern is that for you people in the, for those practicing AI or in the technology field?
Yeah, so I would say pre-generative AI, there was some gap, but then most of this gap was actually mostly exaggerated. So if you take somewhere like the EU, right, the adoption rate of AI in a lot of sectors is not really that high as it seems, for a number of reasons. Regulatory barriers and all of that prevented a lot of AI solutions to be adopted in Europe. But then I would say since generative AI happened, essentially you saw the fastest adopted solution in the world is ChatGPT now. Got 100 million users in a couple of weeks. And so that changed the paradigm. Now, if you're comparing that to, solutions that are built in Africa, then the adoption rate, there's a gap over there. But the other factors at play here. So if you want to work on generative AI, it's very capital intensive. For us to do what we are doing, we have partners like NVIDIA that give us cloud compute credit. We also have, funders like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and then other funding organizations that we work with. But even with that, the capital that really goes into some of this other solution in other parts of the world is much, much heavier. So there's a company in France called Mistral AI. They launched less than 9 months ago. And then before the company even started, they had raised about, $200 million? Because that's how much it takes to do this. Now, the question is that, do institutions or startups, companies in Africa have access to those kind of capital? Should we start looking at alternative fundings, like maybe sovereign wealth funds or some funds within the various African countries on a government level? Should we, even so, I worked on the African Union AI Continental Strategy, and one of the things we actually propose is that let's create an African Union AI fund that would massively support some key startups to be able to fully compete. So access to capital makes a lot of difference. Yeah. Right.
So we're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, we will look at how policy can define the future of AI in Africa. To stay with us. Welcome back to Talk Africa. Still with me are Darlington Akogo, Professor Reem Bagat, and Rispa Onyango. Before the break, we looked at the growth and implementation of AI. Let's now look at how policy may govern the future of AI in Africa. You know, Rispa, the evolution of AI requires policy and regulation. What sort of governance systems do we have in Africa? Are there regulatory frameworks already in place?
Majorly what we have is we have the building blocks towards regulating AI. So we have conversations around the data governance. So we have many countries, I think currently we are at 36 African countries with data protection frameworks, whether it's in terms of a regulation or a law or a policy. I think just about 15 are still missing in trying to set that up. And then we have conversations around cybersecurity, because that's another major concern when you're talking about AI and emerging technologies. So we're having more and more countries having such infrastructure. We also have at the national level, we're having more and more countries putting together their national AI strategies. So I think currently we are about 10 African countries with national AI strategies. Last year, Rwanda was able to put together its national AI policy to be able to support, you know, how they go about whether it is pursuing the developments or the innovations and supporting that within their space. Egypt has an AI strategy. In Kenya, we've actually been having conversations towards an AI bill. Just last year, I believe we had what we call the robotics and AI bill, but there was a lot of backlash with that particular document, and I think that will now fall into, you know, some of the trends we are seeing with how we are going about policy. We have Ghana, we have South Africa. They all have strategies in place and things that can then, things we are using to be able to pursue development or to pursue use and deployment within our particular spaces. So there's a lot of action. At the AU level, we also have a lot of conversation happening there. So we had the AU data policy coming up in 2022. We currently have the AU AI continental strategy for Africa, which is also supposed to now feed into how the national states should then be able to engage on that front. Right. So it would be better to have more engagement, more dialogue, more participation, and then figure out, you know, what is Africa's voice when it comes to artificial intelligence.
Right, let's hear that Africa's voice, Darlington, because, you know, if we talk about the implementation of the existing frameworks, what gaps exist in current AI regulations in Africa? What are the ethical considerations that are unique to AI development and implementation in Africa?
So yes, I do agree with the points that we have to be not excessively quick to regulate, because if you regulate wrongly, you end up stifling innovation. The ethical challenges, they are not so much unique to our case. Most of it is applicable across board. You want AI solutions that are helpful and they end up saving lives, but you don't want things that, you know, would breach people's privacy, would breach or would further propagate biases that exist in society. These issues exist. The challenge that is peculiar in our case, in some sense, is that these models that are built from other parts of the world and we import into Africa, so much of them do not have data from Africa. So therefore, the way they work do not better reflect or adapt to who we are. So what we need to do is definitely have more data from our side of the world and have more AI systems that are built by us. Now, you need to take a balanced stance to regulation. What I usually advise is that take sectors that are extremely sensitive, then you have regulations for them. But what you notice is that some of those sectors or most of those sectors already have regulations that are applicable. So healthcare, for example, we got our AI system certified by FDA Ghana. Is the only standalone AI system that has been certified by a health regulator in Africa. Now, did FDA Ghana have a specific regulation for AI? No. But then they have something called software as a medical device. And so our AI system falls under that. So instead of asking for more regulation, we should revise some of the existing regulation because it's stifling innovation. So, and then if you take certain things like copyright laws, this is a challenge globally. The copyright laws we have globally is not sufficient for the new age of AI. AI needs a lot of data to improve, but then we have this notion that says that if an AI system learns from a book, maybe it is not appropriate in accordance to whoever authored the book. So those are some of the frameworks we need to look at. It's a global conversation that needs to happen, not only in Africa.
Professor Bagat, let me come to you on Egypt's national AI strategy policy. What model did you borrow from when regulation outcomes are being sought? And this is a new technology for the continent. What models are you borrowing? Are you borrowing from the EU, from other countries, or is it has it been country specific for you?
Okay, the law and the governance for it is still getting prepared. Of course, the committee is studying the laws coming from EU or established in EU and other countries, but they will be developing a national one. So it is not really adopting the EU one, it is developing a national one, but it is still getting prepared. I do agree about the concerns about the ethical issues of AI because we would like to use AI widely in Egypt and other African countries in different fields like the health, agriculture, law, etc., etc. But to use it widely means we have to develop quickly the governance for this and the laws needed. And also the implementation of the data privacy law because data will be available at that time for these applications. But again, similar to Ghana, Egypt has developed its own AI applications, whether for health, for agriculture, for the different fields. So till now, this is safe and in control, but I mean to be widely used by more people and in different fields, which will be, whether we like it or not, with the, for example, with the current progress of the ChatGPT and its availability, then yes, the law has to be established and the ethical part of it is covered. So these points have to be taken into consideration, and awareness of the people as they more and more use it. This is very important to be aware of its current problems.
So we're going to end the program, but before we do that, I want to get your final thoughts. And Darlington, let me start off with you, because there's going to be many technologies over the next 50 years. How do you envision the future of AI in Africa, and what milestones do you anticipate?
We are quite lucky, right? We are living in the luckiest time in human history so far. For the first time, we've created something that mimics human intelligence to quite some close degree. What this means is that most of the challenges that we face in Africa, so challenges connected to the sustainable development goals, we can actually leverage AI to solve them. If it is energy crisis, we can solve it, education, healthcare. All of this, we can build massive AI solutions that would really, really impact those sectors across the whole continent. What we need is what I call an accelerationist mindset. Technology is moving very fast. Things are changing. The world is basically, the rules of the world are being rewritten. if we don't act now, if we take a mindset that we have enough time to adopt these technologies fully, the world is going to pass us by. So I would say let's boldly leverage these technologies and accelerate and leveraging them to solve our challenges in Africa.
Rispa, and the kind of considerations that African policymakers should be adopting when developing local or national or continental policy when it comes to AI?
Definitely have a look at a human rights-centered approach, and I think we are seeing that even with the EU, where we are focusing on, how is this affecting our people? How is this allowing our people to actually be able to participate and to be included? And how is this then going to benefit us, even when it comes to economic progression or development? And secondly, how can we promote or incentivize local innovation? So that means let's remove sin taxes that stifle, startups or stifle the setting up of products locally. So let's make sure we are able to have, whether it's fiscal incentives, whether it is a skill development, things or products that allow us to move forward and have that local innovation in place. And then I think lastly is taking back our power and being able to participate in the global conversations, whether it is with the G20 summit. South Africa is hosting it in 2025. So such initiatives where we are actually actively engaging in the discussions, engaging in the crafting of the policies at the global level is going to be helpful in how we then trickle down into our national context.
Professor Bagat, you have the final word.
No, I think actually my colleagues said it all. If we're talking about Africa, it is moving forward in the right direction, but we need to move at a faster speed. We need to reduce faster the digital divide. I'm talking about Africa at large. We need to move faster into providing the connectivity and the physical resources, and we need to move faster into preparing the human resources, and of course putting the strategy and the laws and governance for it. We are moving in the right direction. We are already using AI solutions for different problems, but we can do better, and I think we should just move faster.
All right, indeed. Thank you all very much for this lively discussion. But that's all we have time for on this edition of Talk Africa. A big thank you to all our guests: Darlington Akogo, founder and chief executive officer of several AI-powered companies, including Mino Health AI Labs; Professor Rim Bagat, president of Egypt University of Informatics; and Rispa Onyango, digital policy lead under the Digital Economy Department at the Lawyers Hub here in Kenya. Remember, you can be a part of this conversation online through our social media handles on Facebook and X. You can also catch the show on our YouTube playlist. And do keep this conversation going and join us again next week for more Talk Africa. From me, Beatrice Marshall, and the team here in Nairobi, until next time, it's goodbye.